A fallen Moai lies mid-hillside on Rapa Nui, exactly where it stopped moving centuries ago. In 1955, Thor Heyerdahl proposed dragging it on log rollers with 180 men. But not until the 1990s did archaeologists like Joanne van Tilburg discover the actual truth. The statues rocked upright, needing far fewer hands than anyone imagined. For 2 centuries, scholars debated who these faces honored and why. Yet almost nobody asked the harder, more fundamental question: how did they actually move at all? No wheels existed on this island. No oxen, no horses, no beasts of burden whatsoever. Barely a few thousand people inhabited Rapa Nui. Yet somehow, they transported 80-ton giants across miles of broken volcanic rock. How does an isolated society with minimal resources achieve such an engineering feat? Rapa Nui sits over 2,000 kilometers from the nearest inhabited shore. No visiting ships brought timber or outside assistance. Isolation forced remarkable innovation and ingenuity. At Rano Raraku, the volcano itself became an ancient workshop and quarry. Nearly 900 moai were carved from its stone, many still half buried in the slope, left unfinished. From here, ancient roads radiate outward toward the coast, tracing the exact routes these statues traveled during transport. Early explorers called it a statue graveyard. Dozens of moai lie tilted face down, abandoned along the roads leading from the quarry, frozen mid-journey, as if frozen in time. Something stopped the work abruptly. For nearly 2 centuries, nobody could adequately explain why the moving simply ended so completely. 1955. Thor Heyerdahl arrives with a bold theory. The moai were dragged flat, face up, on log rollers pulled by teams. He recruits nearly 180 islanders. Ropes strain, timber groans under the weight. The statue moves. Heyerdahl believes he has solved the mystery completely. He hasn't. 82 tons, equivalent to 13 elephants or 82 Honda Civics. Heyerdahl needed 180 men dragging flat. Decades later, only 50 walked it upright, felling far fewer trees. Islanders watched Heyerdahl's men strain hauling the stone flat. Elders only shook their heads silently. Their ancestors said, walked. For Owland peoples, no rope or roller ever entered the ancestral story or oral tradition. Their teachings hold that high priests, the Ariki, summoned mana until the moai rose and stepped forward independently, guided by sacred chant and spiritual power toward their designated Ahu shrine platforms. Scholars dismissed the chant as mere folklore. Their explanation seemed obvious: brute muscle, endless logs, and a workforce driven to exhaustion until the entire society collapsed into extinction. In 1995, geographer Jared Diamond published a darker theory. His influential book, Collapse, argued that islanders felled every single palm tree on Rapa Nui, using timber to build rollers and sledges for statue transport. Once the forest vanished, the entire society unraveled completely. Deep within the crater lakes of Rano Raraku and Rano Kau, scientists drilled through centuries of accumulated mud and sediment. Each pollen layer told a story. Palm pollen steadily thinned and then vanished entirely across the precise centuries when moai were being transported across the island. Without palms, islanders could no longer build canoes. Deep-sea fishing ended abruptly. Soil eroded, crops failed, and famine followed. Archaeologists uncovered a dramatic surge in mata, obsidian spear points, scattered widely across the island. Silent archaeological evidence of a civilization descending into violent internal conflict. Yet not every scholar embraced this narrative. Some blamed invasive Polynesian rats, shifting climate patterns, and environmental stress, arguing that statue transport was merely a minor factor, not the primary cause of collapse. But examine the mathematics carefully. Nearly 1,000 statues, some exceeding 80 tons each, dragged on logs across the island? The numbers simply refuse to align. Even the most generous deforestation estimates cannot supply enough timber, harvested fast enough, to roll that volume of monuments. Some researchers began reconsidering the islanders' own testimony. Perhaps these colossal statues never dragged at all. Perhaps they walked, exactly as the oral tradition described. Pavel Pavel, a Czech engineer, chose to interpret the islanders' words as an engineering specification. In 1982, he constructed scale replicas and rocked them methodically side to side. The statues swayed upright, tilting and pivoting. Inch by inch, they inched forward on their own base, like stubborn giants learning to walk. 3 ropes, 1 crew of 12 workers. Pull left, and the statue's base tips and pivots on its cornerstone. Pull right, and it plants forward like a foot finding solid ground. No rollers required. No hundreds of laborers needed. Just rhythm, rope, and coordination, making the statue walk. Skeptics dismissed it as an amusing toy trick with little relevance. But the real evidence lay beneath actual statues on the island. Their bases bore uneven wear patterns, chipped in rhythmic grooves matching a walking gait, never the flat scraping marks of dragging. The Moai themselves had preserved the archaeological truth all along. Heyerdahl himself dismissed it outright. A tabletop trick, he insisted. No small rocking model could ever possibly move 10-ton giants across real terrain. Pavel's proof languished, ignored for 2 decades. Diamond's ecocide narrative dominated instead, blaming islanders for deforesting their own island. While theorists argued in academic print, Van Tilburg was on her knees in the dirt, measuring and sketching. For decades, she documented nearly 900 Moai, creating the first true archaeological census the island had ever possessed. Her census revealed a crucial pattern along the old roads. Statue after statue lay face down, tipped forward on their sides, never on their backs. A dragged load falls sideways. A walking figure losing its footing falls forward. Look closely at each roadside Moai's base. Platform statues stand on flat, rectangular bottoms. These do not. Their bases curve outward, distinctly D-shaped, rounded at the front, engineered not to sit still, but to rock forward. Tilt one of these giants forward, and it doesn't topple over. It settles into balance, poised on that curved edge. Rock it side to side, and the rocking motion converts into a forward shuffling stride. Physics, not magic, transported them home. In 2003, Terry Hunt and Carl Lipo returned to the roads with survey stakes and laser levels, documenting every incline and rut width, every fallen statue's precise angle, assembling the comprehensive dataset no previous researcher had systematically measured. The measurements proved consistent across the sample. Statue after statue showed the same wider base, the same forward lean. Not one matched the flat-backed geometry a dragging sledge would require. The roads themselves were engineered to receive walking giants. At the quarry, Hunt and Lipo traced a clear pattern. Statues abandoned mid-extraction in sequential stages, not scattered randomly. This was organized production. Statues carved upright from inception. Roads deliberately engineered to receive them walking, never dragged. In 2012, Hunt and Lipo cast a concrete Moai, 5 tons, matching the exact base and forward lean of roadside statues. 18 people took up 3 ropes, 1 team each side, 1 behind. No rollers, no sledge, just rope, rhythm, and a testable theory. Left, right, left. The ropes pull in rhythm, and the statue rocks, its D-shaped base biting the dirt, pitching forward inch by inch. In under an hour, 5 tons walk hundreds of meters across the landscape. The old stories were never a metaphor at all. For generations, islanders said the Moai walked by mana. Outsiders heard legend and dismissed it as metaphor for something simpler. But the chant was an instruction manual all along. Mana wasn't magic explaining a drag. It was memory encoding a rocking gait handed down since the carvers themselves. Along the old roads, dozens of Moai lie face down, chins buried in dirt. Not abandoned dregs, statues that stumbled mid-walk, never rising again. Jared Diamond's collapse theory blamed vanishing forests on log rollers dragging statues across the island. But walking requires no rollers, no sledges, barely any timber at all, just rope and rhythm and balance. The felled forest may have had nothing whatsoever to do with moving Moai. History had judged Rapa Nui as a cautionary tale, a people who stripped their island bare and paid the ultimate price. But the walking Moai rewrite that entire verdict. These were not reckless destroyers. They were engineers who solved distance, weight, and balance with rope, rhythm, and nerve. The real catastrophe came later, from the sea itself. Peruvian slave ships dragged islanders away in chains. Smallpox and foreign diseases followed in their wake. Population figures once used to prove ecological suicide now point to a different killer entirely: contact with the outside world. For 200 years, scholars called it myth. The Moai walked by mana, spiritual power flowing through them. They were almost right about that. The word was metaphor, but the memory encoded within it was literal. The keepers of the story never needed an expedition to know the truth. Now, Rapa Nui descendants pull the ropes themselves. Every rock of the statue answers a story their grandparents never doubted. Perhaps every impossible legend hides a working blueprint, waiting for someone patient enough to test it.